So, what did you miss at Jubilee today? Well, you missed a wonderful gathering, even with the hours change. Thank you, Daylight Savings. We had a good turnout, and we had a good turnout to hear from Etienne as he lit the Christ candle of what it's like to be disappointed. Etienne shared his experience of expecting a call from a church to go and serve, a congregation that he knows and was all but assured, and then somehow it didn't come to be. And what it's like when God's plans are not your plans, and that feeling of disappointment, but that also that experience of discovering the light of Christ in our hard times, in our readjustments, and trusting in that light. Etienne shared that story with us this morning as he lit the Christ candle, and the choir responded by singing an anthem of trust. And it was a beautiful way to start the service. In fact, we could have probably just ended there. It made the point so beautifully, and we came together as a community in that moment. It was wonderful. But then we went on to hear of Jesus throwing over the tables of the money lenders and merchants at the temple. We heard Paul write to the church in Corinth and speak of the foolishness of the cross. And we also heard of the Ten Commandments. And we wondered a little bit about the foolishness of the cross, how our faith is not a formula that we can easily share. It's not an argument we can persuasively put forth. Our faith is spiritual and emotional and experiential. And unless you have the experience or are open to the experience, no amount of argument is going to win anybody over. And then we went back to Jesus knocking over tables, and what was he so upset about? And we've always been told, or many of us have been told, that he was upset that they had turned the place, that Jesus had turned the place into a market, that the people had turned the temple into a market, and that the selling of doves and the changing of money was the problem. And yet, when we look at the Ten Commandments, we realize that those people were just helping travelers, sojourners, to obey the letter of the law, to obey the very commandments that we refer to as the Ten Commandments, to honor God and to have no false idols. And so you had to wonder, what's Jesus upset about? They're following the letter of the law. And then we realize that God's law is not so much meant as a code by which we judge others and decide who's in and who's out and who's righteous and who's not. But in fact, it's a personal invitation by God to invite us into a personal relationship with God. And through these commandments, through the Word of God, we examine our own lives. And when we find ourselves wanting, we come to God instead of running away from God. When we find ourselves not measuring up, it's not that we need to feel unworthy and therefore must hide from God, but we recognize how much help we need and come into community. We come into God's presence. We seek support and help. The letter of the law indeed may convict us, but the spirit of the law lifts us up. The essence of the law is love. And so we spent some time with that. And perhaps that's what Jesus was upset about, that those who were selling doves and exchanging money were so concerned with the letter of the law and so good at helping people live up to the letter that they had lost the spirit, the idea of coming into communion with God, to being one with God and even with each other. And so the invitation was to us, as it is to you if you're listening now, to remember the laws, the rules that God puts before us, absolutely, and to occasionally judge ourselves by those very rules and realize that we're not all that we could be, that we are missing better ways to do things. but then to recognize that those laws are not meant to condemn us, but to invite us. The letter of the law might convict us, but the spirit of the law lifts us, redeems us, and brings us into God's presence. At least that's what we were thinking this morning. And it's too bad you weren't with us, but hopefully we'll get to see you very soon. God bless.